Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Indie Comics Talk. Put up this background, this awesome background here. Welcome in, Charlie. It's so good to have you on here. I've been following your work since, I guess since it was we had White Ash coming from Scout, and I wasn't on all the Kickstarter stuff at the beginning, but the recent ones have been awesome, and following the stories that you're creating has just been fantastic. So I'm glad we're finally able to get you on here while you got another awesome campaign going on right now. Glarien, Short and Deadly. Welcome in.
Well, thank you. I was watching the show last night, and it's amazing how this show has grown. I'm sorry anyone who's tuning in for a continuation of the Liana Sarah Comedy Hour, because that was a fantastic show. I think we'll do our best to try to follow that, but talk about an amazing act kicking off the week for you guys.
I don't think we've had that funny of a show ever. They were both fantastic. Highly recommend.
Let me correct you. From what I hear, every show is that funny. So if anyone's watching right now, they should hit the subscribe button, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, yes. Every show is. We just keep getting funnier each show. That's the thing.
And having better and better guests.
Exactly. And this is a good week of guests. Them last night, and then you tonight, and diving into the White Ash universe and everything you got going on there.
Well, it's really great to be here. Like I said, I've been following the channel for a while. I love seeing what you guys put out on Twitter, and it's hard for indie comic creators to make waves, and so advocates are so important for them, especially now when we're in a time of contraction in the market because the marketplace is going through some changes. So having people and having shows like yours is vitally important for the indie comic community. So thank you for being here.
I appreciate the support, from that regard, and that you were watching last night, the comedy hour that we were having.
Well, I mean, it's like that's the thing that I try to tell new creators getting into indie comics, especially if you come from some other field. So for people who don't know, I worked in film and television for a long time. But way before that, before I worked in film and television, I had a dream of working in comics. I interned at Marvel when I was in college. And were it not for a job offer in Los Angeles that brought me all the way across the country to where I still reside now, I probably would have, bundled up my car and driven down, moved to Brooklyn and tried to break in as a writer inker those many years ago. So I've had a lot of perspective on both many different aspects of the entertainment industry, working in, like I said, film, animation, TV, independent film. I worked in documentary filmmaking for a little while. So I've had a pretty robust career, but all through it, I wanted to come back to comics, which is, what I eventually did. And the thing that I love about comics and independent comics in particular is how welcoming the community is for new people. And that there is a camaraderie, there's a solidarity. So yes, I mean, like, I love Liana. I've been lucky enough to have her do 3 covers for me with me. I don't want to say 4, but with, she's collaborated with me on 3 different colors. So, which is incredible. And so I want to show support to the artists I work with, the other writers that I know, because we are a community. And that's how you grow as a creator, how you grow your fan base. It's together.
And like you said, you've had a lot of experience with the growth of your comics. The one we're going to talk about today is doing amazing on Kickstarter. Just blowing numbers out of the water, it seems like. Which means still everyone needs to go back it, because we can keep blowing those numbers out of the water here. And it's an awesome story. So we kind of already took the first question and ran with it there a little bit about you getting into comics. Seems like started way back with the internship with Marvel, and that
even before that, I was a collector who was obsessed with basically all things Marvel for years. And then like the Batman storylines I would pick up. So, 1985 through 1998, I have everything. Right? Like that's a window where there's the locked boxes of long boxes in the closet.
Yeah.
So that I was very well invested in both as at the fandom and thinking about working there professionally.
Seemed like the world said, "Come back to comics," and this is where we want you.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this, like having had some success in the other fields, it's always been a slog because there are so many decision makers and there's so much money riding on things. So
Yeah.
you have stories that you want to tell, and you meet the right development executive and they're like, this is great. And like, let's do this together. And then they're pitching it to studios. And, then the studios are saying yes or no. I've told this story. Maybe I won't get into this one. Let's just put it this way. Way back in the day, I had a script that had a certain director attached to it who may have gone on to do Guardians of the Galaxy. And it was pitched to Universal, this script that I had written that this director was going to do. And Universal passed because Universal didn't think this director could handle a big budget action comedy. So, like,
Well,
that's the kind of things that happen to you in the
yeah,
entertainment. So you can even have like the perfect director. You can have a good script. And then you can have decision makers who are making arbitrary decisions because everyone is afraid because you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars being invested. Versus the comic industry where people are willing
yeah,
to take chances. And the wonderful thing that I've been able to do is in the last 6 to 7 years is just tell the stories I wanted to tell the way I wanted to tell them and put them out there and see, do they resonate with people? And the answer has been yes. And so I think as an artist, as a writer, as someone who wants to tell stories, that's been incredibly validating. And the thing that's been missing from the career I had the 20 years prior. I mean, I had a couple of things I was very proud of that I'm happy that I had done.
yeah,
Um, but to be able to do this on a regular basis, be like, okay, what's the new thing we're going to do? Let's do it. Let's get it to people and let's get the feedback. And so I think the immediacy of comics, and even though it probably feels to a creator starting out that it's very expensive compared
yeah,
to every other form of every other part of the entertainment industry, it's actually really cheap.
yeah. And I mean, there's different levels of, I feel like, different levels of art production and pieces there that,
Sure.
um, if you're working with someone new, you both are coming up together. It might be a cheaper way to
Right.
get in, and then you both level up together. I know that's Travis's YouTube thing. There is talking about leveling up in comics.
100%, 100%.
Um,
I mean,
but
Connor Hughes, who I work with, who's the co-creator of White Ash,
yeah,
no one knew who he was when we started working together,
yeah,
and he's doing bigger and bigger things. He is a real talent. I think his storytelling is as good as anybody who's working in the industry. His backgrounds are insane, so he just does gorgeous work. And big companies are starting to take notice of him, which is really nice.
as they should.
He
Yeah,
is doing a series of covers right now for a big IP, which is really nice. That he, can't talk about yet, but that's going to be
yeah,
coming out, and so I think that's just going to help put him more on the map for the insane talent that he is. Um, and so I'm really happy that I've been able to sort of see his journey from someone who people didn't know to someone who's going to be a guest at a lot of the big conventions going forward.
yeah. And I think going back to what you were saying earlier about the comics community and especially indie comics and how welcoming and accepting everyone is, I think from that perspective, that helps, each other push forward and reach those levels that Connor is seeing. That, I mean, your work is seeing, even though it's not, you're not going for those big two, but your independent work is just reaching broader and broader audiences. And like, there's almost 1,200 backers on this campaign right now.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing that I've been able to sort of build with the fan base on Kickstarter, and to know that if we're doing a White Ash project or a Glarien plot project, that there's going to be at least 1,000 people that show up to
Yeah,
back it is a very empowering place as a creator because it gives me the luxury to say, ooh, which artists do I want to work with on this story?
Yeah.
Which person do I want to pull in for a pinup? Because if it's something really expensive, I can work with some best. Ivan,
What do you
yeah.
want to do? An awesome cover.
So Ivan and I have been actually working together before he kind of blew up as well. I mean, like the first work that I had seen him do was a Zenoscope cover about 3 years ago,
Okay.
maybe 2.5 years ago. And I was like, who is this artist? And I just sort of hit him up, and he's like, sure, I'd be happy to do a cover for you.
Yeah.
And from there, he's become one of the big cover artists in the industry. And and I've been promoting him all along because I think together again we all grow together, and he is just wonderful.
Yeah.
Great to work with.
Awesome to see his success as well. Just the
Yeah,
covers that
yeah.
he's getting to do now. I have a couple of his Something's Killing the Children covers that he did as exclusives that are just brilliant. Some Gwen covers he did. Just like that's an artist that I'm like, yep, I need to buy more, and my wallet says no.
Yep.
So when you put his cover out there on a book, I said, all right, this is both of the areas that I like to buy comics in. It's independent comics, it's White Ash Comics, which the story is awesome. We're gonna get to that a little bit. Hey, what's up, Promiscuous Time Traveler?
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I mean, I
He's
do love the fact that and this is, we can also talk a little bit about this, but there's a lot of differences between the direct market and Kickstarter. And I've been
yeah,
fortunate to be able to have the ability to put books out in both places. Um, but with the direct market, there's always attrition after
yeah,
issues. And so like you hope for a really big first issue that's going to carry enough momentum so you can get
mhm,
far enough into a series that maybe you can get that second wave of backers coming on. And it's a very hard, or second wave of readers coming on. So it's a very
yeah,
hard thing to do. And that's why I think at this point it's only the biggest names in comics that the stores are comfortable with ordering past the second
yeah,
issue or the third issue that have a chance to have a sustained run. And by biggest names, I mean like there's maybe 10 people in comics who
hmm
can drop an indie book and expect to get to 12 issues at this point. Versus Kickstarter, and I use Kickstarter as kind of the general for crowdfunding, but that's my home in
yeah,
particular. Um, is that you go the other way, because every time you bring a campaign to the table,
yep,
you have a chance to bring in new readers. It's not number 3 on a stand. It's always 1 through 3. It's always
yep,
1 through 4. So every campaign is a jumping on point for new readers. They're all there. Sometimes you have some of the old collectible issues, and so it's more welcoming. And so for me, my numbers have constantly gone up from campaign to campaign to the point
yeah,
where I have a very huge fan base of people who are enjoying the stories. And again, that gives me the luxury to start saying, okay, you know what? We're going to do even more. We're going to do, like these 8 short stories are just things that are going to flesh out the universe. These aren't even the prime narrative.
yeah,
These are all texture. These are hidden bites. They, when seen in context of, the greater White Ash story, they will play a part, but they're designed
yeah.
to be a standalone piece by itself as well.
What's something that you think there's a lot of people out there that do just go to their shop, pick up comics, and they are hesitant to go to Kickstarter and back a comic. What's something that you think does get that person to take that step and jump into backing comics on Kickstarter?
Well, I think there are 2 things that often turn people off. One's the price point, because Kickstarter comics can be higher than what you get at the shop, and the other is
Yeah,
people they don't want to wait, right? They think, oh, it's
yeah,
too long of a wait from when I get the comic, and I would turn those 2 things around and say, hey, if Marvel was going to come out with a print run of 7,000 for this next Spider-Man issue, just 7,000 for this cover, how
hmm
much would you pay?
yeah,
7,000 copies of Spider-Man, that's going to be $25, right? Maybe higher
yeah,
for a 20-page issue on
yeah,
Marvel's tissue paper stock. And now and then you like and then you go over to Kickstarter, where the highest print run books are somewhere in the 2,000 to 3,000 print range, right? And
yep,
then there's going to be limited variants that'll be in the 50 to 250 copy range. And those are like artisan books that are printed on high-end paper stock. So if
yeah,
you're looking at as a collector, if you're looking at the quality of the book that you're actually going to be getting, you see where like some of that price break and things are happening that makes you understand, okay, you know what? This is the same price I would pay for something else. I'm just
Yeah.
not thinking of it that way. I'm comparing this Kickstarter book to the $3.99 or the $4.99 book that I get on the shelf, but it's not that. It's the
Yeah.
limited edition rare cover, but it's actually printed on better stock, and in often cases it's longer. Like, I mean, like most of my books go from 32 to like the last White Ash was 64 pages,
Yeah.
which gives you a lot of bang for your buck. And then, going back to the other part, which is the weight that you have to do for your book, I would say to them, well, how many of you put books on pull, right? And how many months ahead of time are you putting those books on pull before you're going to go to the store to pick them up?
Yeah.
And you have to think about, yeah, no, look, I will tell you, like,
Yeah.
I try to print at a minimum of an 80-pound interior page. I go with 110-pound cover stock. I'm using soft touch on my covers right now. So every single book that I put out feels like a premium book. The Glarien trade that we're going to have that's coming out, it has dust jackets. It's got end pages. It's Smith case binding. It's the works. It's like that. That's the other thing when you're your own publisher, because these are my stories. I want them to look as good as they possibly can. I want them to be printed on the best paper. I want everything that I put out to feel like a premium experience. So that's
And I feel like it's if you look at the market and what's out there, direct market, it's only the indie publishers that are trying to do that same thing to a certain degree. Um, I think of the really small ones that tend to do it. Like Sumerian does a lot of really good quality paper. Sometimes some recent ones here and there weren't, but they did that. Blood Moon just switched over to a really high quality paper that came out because their previous printer was not doing, I guess, quite as well, or something happened there. There's like these smaller publishers. I'm like, you guys are doing it. Marvel, DC, Marvel in particular, are just like, here's toilet paper
Yeah, yeah. I
and
mean, and look,
read our
it
comics.
they're still, it's disposable income versus an artisan book, and that's so
Yeah,
so. But what I would say is, in terms of that turnaround, it's the same. It's the same time between backing something on Kickstarter and putting something on pull, and there's actually a better chance you're going to get that thing on Kickstarter than you might get it from
yeah,
a publisher, because publishers cancel series all the time. Sometimes your store does not order enough copies for you to get one, so people get shorted,
yeah,
right? And so like there's all these different points of failure that happen in that model that people are so used to partaking in, they don't think twice about, you know okay, I'm putting this book on pre-order. Oh, it got delayed 3 weeks. Okay, it got delayed 4 weeks. Oh, it didn't come out because my shop got shorted. Oh,
yeah.
that sucks, right? But someone's like, oh, I don't want to wait 2 months to get it directly from the creator who's printing it just for me.
Right.
Right? Like in
Which
my
is
mind,
insane.
like
Like,
it's a way more direct, especially with a creator with a track record. I mean, I get it
yeah,
if it's a brand new creator, but if the creator has a track record, you have a much better chance of getting that book, getting it in pristine condition, getting it delivered to you.
there there are a handful of creators that I know within X amount of time, I'm gonna have my book. Like, just because you're one, you're putting out quality content all the time. Uh, Pat Shan's sometimes a little bit slower, but I know it's coming. Like, it's always
Yeah.
coming. He's always got 20 books coming down the line, and I'm
Yes.
I'm excited for all of them to arrive when they do. It doesn't it doesn't have to happen right away. I'm okay with waiting. Travis is always putting stuff out like within a month or two
Yeah.
after.
So
Like you said, within that time frame of if you put in your previews order 2 months ahead, it's the
yeah,
same weight.
it is.
Granted, I
It is.
know I
So
know I know a lot of people don't pre-order, and that's a whole nother discussion and issue to talk about on another day. But
well, it is because it's look, that's the other thing, and I hate to say this, but the direct market is going through some real issues right now, and some of it has to do with there was a little bit of an overexpansion that happened during
yeah,
COVID, and a lot of stores overexpanded, a lot of publishers overexpanded, and so we're going to be seeing some contraction right now. So
yep,
if you have a store that you love, it's really important that You're putting in pre-orders, you're picking up the things that you put on pre-order because
Yes.
the belts are tightening right now for shops. And so they're pulling back. Hey,
Hey, Lonzo.
they're pulling back right now. So it's really important that you support your shops, that you support the indie creators that you love, support the publishers that you love, because some publishers are also having some harder times now too, because of this
Yeah.
contraction, because of interest rates, because of streamers pulling back their acquisitions. There's all these different things that play. But the thing is, if you love comics, support the creators, the stores, and the publishers that you love.
Yeah. That's like I have maybe a hand less than 5 books that are from Marvel DC on my pull. For me, if I want to read those stories, I'm gonna pick them up and trade later on, or maybe read them digitally, or something. I want all my money to go to the indie publishers that are, I mean, they need that support because they're putting really high quality stories out there. And I don't know, I just love living in the different indie worlds that are being created all the time.
Well, and I think that that speaks to also, I think there's an evolution of what your interests are.
Hmm.
And, I go back from, I could been called a Marvel zombie back in the day in terms
Yep,
of just wanting everything that they put out
it's
and
how I
starting with
started.
Spider-Man. And by the end, I had probably 45, 50 Marvel titles a month, thanks X-Men for having, 20 of those titles. But, like the, like when you, I think as you get older, for some of us, you know, the fact that we love those characters so much starts to not quite work with the fact that it's different writers coming onto the books.
Yeah,
So the Spider-Man that you love is no longer Spider-Man, right? And that's not to say that
yeah,
there shouldn't be multiple versions of Spider-Man. I think, all these
yeah,
characters need to keep evolving. But I know for me, like my favorite run was Peter David's run on the Incredible Hulk because it was 12 years of the same writer on the book. And so it
yeah,
all felt like a unified vision. Same thing with Chris Claremont on the X-Men. Again, it's a unified vision and unified voice. And when you have the different creative teams coming in, it's exciting. It brings in new readers. But for me, I went from a place of, I love all of this to, these aren't my characters anymore. That's
yeah,
okay because I'm going to go find these other stories that speak to me. And that's what kind of brought me into Vertigo. It brought me into, more of the independent fare, and then Image went from just being Savage Dragon and Spawn to being Monstrous, to being The Walking
so
Dead, to
many.
being Saga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Come back to that comment in a second, but I think we kind of started in a similar way. Spider-Man was my character. I was reading at the time. It was Dan Slott. It was post Spider-Verse. Post. I actually started when Secret Wars, Hickman's Secret Wars, was going on, and so it was Dan Slott when Spider-Man was rich and blowing all of his money. It was an interesting Spider-Man time. And that's, I think, now, like, I'm reading Spider-Man that Dan Slott's writing, the end of the Spider-Verse story, but I'm not reading Amazing Spider-Man. I'm not reading these other ones that are out there. Some reason that's how I connect with Spider-Man, is however Dan Slott's writing him.
Yeah. And look, I think that's the important thing, that you want to find stories that speak to you. And it's hard. And again, this is not a knock on Marvel and DC. I think they're both vitally important to the comic book industry.
Oh yeah,
but but the type of stories that they tell are cyclical, in the nature of, like, there's a period where the character is going to feel like this, then we need to evolve it, then we need to evolve it, and part of that is to bring in new readers, part of it is to sort of keep up with time. So, like, there's all these things happening, so people are
yeah,
curators of these characters for a time period. And it's like, it's almost like, if you watch Doctor Who, which I think you do, I think I caught
yeah,
that from yesterday. It's
yeah.
like you have your doctor, right? Like
Hmm.
there's, and like all the others can be great, but you might have the doctor that you look back and you say, oh no, you know what, these are all great, but David Tennant,
Yeah,
he was really the doctor. And like, that's my period. Or for me, for a long time it was Tom Baker.
yeah,
Because I was watching it. And so I think that you can have your, like, my Spider-Man was like the David Michelini, Todd McFarlane run.
yeah,
Like, I I was reading that when Todd came onto the book, and it was interesting. It was dynamic, but yeah, and the character, like for me, when the Clone Wars, I mean not the Clone Wars, the Clone Saga hit,
Yeah.
that was very different, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to go there with Spider-Man. So then you hit these jumping off points where
Yeah.
like, you know what? I mean, I'm leaving college, I have no money. That's not where my money is going to go because my Spider-Man is
Yeah.
done. So,
Yeah.
um, anyway,
Yeah. To come back to this, yeah. I mean, Kickstarters, honestly, for the ones that I back, crowdfunding in general, there's a great track record across the board. There are maybe certain groups of people that don't put out their comics for years and years and years. But we're not going to talk about them because they don't need any screen time.
well,
But
I also think that speaking of crowdfunding, it's about to get better.
yeah,
And that's because of where the direct market is. I think more creators are going to need to diversify their revenue streams because they want to be able to afford to make these books. And that's
yeah,
the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is how much money it costs to make these pages, to be able to pay artists. And
yeah,
so you need to set up a sustainable revenue stream. And even some of these smaller publishers, they'll put your books out, but you're not making enough money at that place to actually create the book,
hmm,
which is not a great model.
yep,
And so creators need to find ways to make the books first, and like that's the model that I've started with. Is like I do things on Kickstarter for my early adapters, for my hardcore fans, and then we'll put a different version out either through like as I had in the past through Scout,
yeah,
or if at some point it's a different company, whatever it is, then there will be a direct market version a year or 2 years down the road.
yeah,
But for the early adopters, we're going to do these premium versions, the high end paper, and you get to help make sure the story keeps being told.
yeah,
So,
uh, yeah, yeah. Pretty much down to very minimal on those as well. Uh, but there's we've talked about this on Twitter messaging before about the timeline, right? You said, yeah, a year or two later, you want to put it out there to try to get it to publishers. You've got it all set, it's created. So publishers are going to see that as more enticing. They don't have to wait for it to be created, they don't have to wait for you to pay for it to be created. But I think recently in Kickstarters, I've been seeing more and more of them starting to hit the rec market before the backers have it. And that's
well, I think
a new development, it feels like.
that's an issue. That's I mean,
Yeah.
as someone who's a huge Kickstarter advocate, someone who worked in publishing, that is a disconnect between the publisher who's putting it out and the person who ran the
Yeah.
Kickstarter, and not understanding what they're doing is they are salting the earth, so to speak, for that creator to go back to Kickstarter,
Yeah.
because that creator now will have a tarnished reputation because his backers will be like, hey, we paid more for this, we could have just waited for it to come out in the direct
Right.
market. So as a creator, it's really important that if you're making a deal with a publisher, you need to say, I need to do my backers first, there needs to be a
Yep.
waiting period. I mean, I personally, even like the versions that of White Ash that came out through Scout were different than what I put
Yeah.
out to Kickstarter backers, and not just covers, like there were some extra pages. Like I wanted to make it a different experience between the two different places. And it was something I was cognizant of from the minute I signed a deal. This is how I'm going to do this to make sure it's a
Yeah.
different experience.
Well, and I think that's what you do well. What some of the other creators that I know you interact with a lot do well is that we see that there's that extra mile for the backers. So it's one of those things, if people are looking at your projects and are like, should I drop that 20 $30 on a book that maybe I haven't explored yet, you're going to get that value in that 20 $30. Um, and I a lot of creators do that. They go that extra mile on Kickstarter for their backers, and that's what I really love about it.
Yeah, look. At the end of the day, it's you're self-publishing, right? And so you're running your own company. You are the brand.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I want those things to be synonymous with knowing that I treat other creators well,
Mhm.
that we're putting out a good quality product, that it's coming, it's something that you can trust, and yeah, I mean, I try to put out best quality version of everything I can do from the paper. So, for larger orders, I have custom boxes that I use.
Yeah.
So like it's an experience, and I think the Kickstarters that do really well feel like a special experience that you're part of. It's not just a pre-order system, and I think that's the other thing. When you buy a comic book through the stores, it is great, but you're just buying a comic. Here
Yeah.
you're buying a window to interact with a creator. You know that the creator is hopefully bringing you more content. We add a lot of digital add-ons for this Kickstarter. We're limiting it to um, just extra pinups for the book,
Yeah.
but I'm working with lots of different people. Um, let's see, who did I just? Elsie Romboli, who actually did Destiny New York, just signed on to do a Glarien pinup, so she's going to do a killer one. I'm sure I'm going to be
Yeah.
announcing that tomorrow, but I just announced it now because we just
Scoop.
crossed another stretch goal. But
Where where is it? Breaking
it's always
news.
that's right. That's right. So for me, like it's when a Kickstarter does well, it's also an excuse to invest in better things for the people. So again, they feel, I also like do my royalty structures with the creators I work with, so they can do better sometimes with the Kickstarters, particularly on like
Mhm.
my ongoing series. So like everyone is rooting for the things to succeed,
Yeah.
from the creators to the backers, because they know the better we do, the more premium content we're going to have.
Yeah. I wanted to bring this up real quick because I think from
Yeah,
my perspective on that, I think that both helps and hurts the market in different ways. It seems like sometimes it's just overwhelmingly just like almost like a money grab, but
well,
and that kind of
so
push,
so
that push.
here's what I'm going to do, try to get this.
There's different things with variants. So I want to hear your thoughts on it too, because you do, I think, a
Yeah,
great number and a great
so
way
so
with them.
so quickly, just like I think he's probably talking more about the direct market.
Yeah.
Kickstarter is its own market. There's crazy collectors who go on Kickstarter. I always try to get a couple of variant covers, depending on the project, maybe a few more, maybe a few less. Um, but I have always a reading copy for the fans, right?
Yeah.
And for the people who just want to read, those are the people who just back that, and everyone's happy. Collectors get what
Yeah.
they want, but it's different than the stores, where you're asking the stores to buy 25 copies of this book to get this issue unlocked, right?
Yeah.
And so the stores have to invest in riskier and riskier schemes to get these things they're trying to chase to hopefully make their money back. So it's a risky enterprise, and the pandemic, there was a boom on these things like everything else. And now that things are contracting, publishers are looking for ways to make up some of those lost sales, and that's
Mhm.
why they're putting out more variant covers. Because if they can't sell as many of the A cover, well, maybe they can sell two of each of the 18 other covers that they put out, and now they'll be back at that number that they started with. So I think you're seeing a lot of this stuff happening. Some publishers are putting out more books because rather than putting out 10 titles that are selling 50 copies a piece, they're now selling 20 titles that are selling 20 copies a piece. There's still, like, so like there's that kind of calculus going on. I think if you are a publisher in the direct market, when you're launching a series, you should have a variant cover to maybe three at most
Yeah.
for that series, right? If But after that, I don't know.
Yeah.
It comes down I don't think we need multiple variant covers for issues. I love the like back in the day, back in my day, when like when you had those milestone issues, they just did a really nice A cover,
Yeah.
right? Like the A cover had the holofoil, it had like the embossing, whatever it was, the die cut, and like there's that, what was it, Wolverine 50 or 75, where it has like the claw mark
Mhm.
through the cover, whatever it
Yeah,
was.
the die
Like
cast,
that's how they did it.
die cut,
Yeah.
cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So,
I and
so
that seems
rather
like
than
more. I would say that seems like a thank you to the fans who've been reading, versus now it's like buy all of our covers that were put out, like 10, 20 covers for this issue.
Right, right. And you can mark up that cover anyway because you're going to need to. But I
Yeah.
do think that, the market is facing oversaturation now, which is
Mhm.
hurting everything. And
Yeah.
so publishers need to be more responsible. Ideally, if the publishers have the reserves, what they should be doing is pulling back the number of titles they have a month, making sure they're putting out their best quality content and
Yeah.
supporting it better. And I think short term, they're going to lose some money, but long term, hopefully they'll make that money back because it's just a little bit of adjustment rather than going from all these titles to a couple of ones that are great, get behind them
Yeah.
more rather than just seeing what sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're 36 minutes in, and we haven't really gotten to talk about anything at all about the story. So let's talk about, for if somehow someone stumbling upon this doesn't know anything about the White Ash universe, Glarien, any of that, how would you give them that 30-second elevator pitch on it?
So my quick pitch is, for White Ash, it's grounded fantasy. Think Romeo and Juliet meets Lord of the Rings in rural Pennsylvania. Or imagine the guys from Supernatural got stuck in Riverdale, but rather than battling demons from hell, they had to deal with the worst of Mordor. So those are the big broad strokes. The other
Yeah.
quick one I say is like elves and dwarves in coal mining country, a little bit of romance. So that's the White Ash universe, and then Glarien is a spin-off of it, which follows the world's most dangerous elf from White Ash, and this is stories from her youth back in Elfheim all the way up to her latter days in White Ash, Pennsylvania, and she is more of a primal character. Think if Conan and Gladriel had a baby, uh,
Mhm.
who is both more fierce and dangerous than both of them combined,
Yeah.
that would be Glarien. And so that's what I like to use Glarien for is so White Ash is a modern fantasy set in this town in Pennsylvania, town of White Ash, and you know the story is gonna. I have it plotted out for a long time. You know, things go well, it's going to be 60 plus issues. And there are things that I'm seeding now in the story that I know I have the luxury that will at least get to all these points later on that will eventually pay off. Which is a wonderful place to be able to sit on story points in indie comics that you won't pay off for 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a huge story about how they got to White Ash, and that informs all the things that are going forward.
Hmm.
And that's what Glarien is.
Yeah.
Glarien is my way of doing those flashbacks like you see on Lost.
Yeah.
The great storytelling trope of Lost was like the story would move forward, but then you would have all these flashbacks to before they got on the island, right?
Yeah. How did
And
they get to the plane and what led them
yeah,
there?
and it would recontextualize who you thought they were as people, right? And
Yeah.
and that's what I'm doing with these Galarian stories is when viewed in context, you're going to see important pieces of the past that pay off in the future. And so even though like all 8 of these stories that are in the current Kickstarter are standalone stories, together they tell an arc, and they are also telling a piece. Like you will see how all those parts will pay off in White Ash later on, but you can just get this Kickstarter and it'll feel like a complete story and stand alone, but it's part of a greater whole because everything I like
Yeah.
to write, I was talking with someone, I was talking with Pat the other day about my writing process, and he's like, well, how do you write a short? And I was like, well, I have this piece of information that I want to drop, and I want to do it in this time period. What's the best story? What's the best emotion that's going to that I can handle that? But there's always a nugget of some part of this greater tapestry that I'm
Yeah.
trying to weave that forms the initial kernel of these different stories. So like that's kind of how I write. I want to make sure that there's plenty of character and motivation to carry you through, but it all comes together.
And you got a little bit of everything in there for, people jumping on, don't know what's going on. And then people who have been reading this for a while can really dive into the lore that you're providing for the world there.
Yeah, and again, the nice thing because it's Kickstarter, there are all kinds of catch-up tiers. So if you just want to get this Galarian hardcover with all the with the 8 short stories, you can do that. If you want to get
Yeah.
all the Galarian stories that we've told to date, you can do that as well. If you want to get all the Glarien and White Ash, boom. If you want to get everything I put out, which includes the game, how I slept my way through college, you can put all of those things together in a big White Ash universe Kickstarter. So
all of these right here, which
yeah,
the game fantastic so far. I think issue 2 and 3 have that wrapped
they have
up,
not.
and
They
they haven't shipped yet.
issued. They have not shipped yet. The Kickstarter campaign wrapped up. We are in colors right now on issue 3. Triona, who's the colorist, Triona Farrell, who's amazing. She's getting married. So it's
Awesome.
like, so like
Congrats to
we'll see
her.
how. Yeah, so we'll see how long that takes. But hopefully soon. Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
And then
No, I really enjoyed
through
issue 1 of that.
the PDF will. Yeah, it's and Connor, you'll see, is continuing to level up with his with his artwork in it too. So it's I'm really excited about that as well.
With building up multiple stories now, how do you balance that in creating those Kickstarter campaigns? Do you try to hit up 2 parts of one story and then come back to something else, or do you really try to just spread out that love across the different stories you got going on?
So it is a little bit of a calculus as you're trying to figure out what should go when. I also know that certain series will do a little bit better than other series. I try to front load my biggest series at the beginning of the year. That way I know what kind of cash flow from a businessman, that I'm dealing with, to make sure that I have the funding in place. So when I'm working with these artists, I'm not worried about, do we have enough to pay for that? It's like, let's just make this, let's make that. We'll run some more Kickstarters later on, but right now we're set. We have and so having this Glarien campaign at the beginning of the year, which is doing great.
Yeah.
To everyone who supported it, really appreciate it. It lets me have a lot of flexibility for what I do for the rest of the year. The artists I work with, it lets me take risks. I can try some other books. So I can try dropping a new series, and you see what resonates with people. And it's nice to know that White Ash does, that Glarien does, that the game does, and that we're constantly building all these different things out.
I love Connor's
variant. Great cover by cover.
I had to go with that one. I was like, this is perfect.
It is that was his idea. He was like, how about something like that sounds great to me. And that's the wonderful thing when you're working with someone who is the co-creator of the character, right?
Yeah.
Like these are Connor's characters too, and he knows them as well. Although I will say Romina is she has a lot of ownership over Glarien at this point, with the miniseries she's been doing, with all the shorts she's been doing. If there's someone I would bring in and say, okay, I also give you carte blanche to do what you want, it's her. So
yeah. This is a great question here from Promiscuous Time Traveler. How many Glariens have there been? Well, I read the book with 3 shorts as well as White Ash.
So PTT, we have, at this point, there was the 3 short story book that Scout put out, which was a collection of 3 short stories. Since then, I have started a Glarien Origins, kind of like a year 1 miniseries, and we've done 2 issues of that. You can see them right there on the screen, and that takes place 3,000 years ago in Elfheim, and also in 1970s New York City, where this young woman is having visions of being Glarien. And those 2 stories are going to come together over the course of the miniseries. You'll see how those women are connected, and it ties into everything that's going on in White Ash right now. So we've done those. Through Scout, we put out 6 issues, and then was collected in the trade that you can see in the bottom left-hand corner. We had the first issue of what we call season 1 that came out, and then after that there was a White Ash DE, which we put out just on Kickstarter, and that was technically, depending on how you're counting, because the numbering is different on Kickstarter and it's also in the direct market, I apologize. It's the next 2 issues bundled together that would have come after season 1, or if you had backed chapter 5 on Kickstarter, this is actual issues, chapters 6 and 7. So, yeah. Oh, hey, Kyle. Yeah. Well, Kyle, you are in luck. We're running a Kickstarter right now where you'll be able to catch up with everything.
There's the
Yeah,
digital catch up there, $30,
and
and
if anyone is watching who is in California, I will also be at WonderCon with a pretty full setup in 3 or 4 weeks, and David Byrne will also be joining me there. I
awesome. A steak
know
steak
Caroline
and
is
white
a big
ash.
fan of, yeah, little power booth. We've got a big
Yeah,
10 by 20 area we'll be splitting. So
I'll be a great combo boost there. But yeah,
for
get the
sure.
whole physical catch up right there for Glarien and white ash.
Yeah, Kyle, we got some crazy variant covers too. Yes, you can,
Yes.
Kyle, you can buy everything at WonderCon except for this hardcover that we're kickstarting right now, which is only on Kickstarter, because we're after Kickstarter this wraps, then we'll send it off to the printer and it'll be 3 months to have that printed.
Yeah. So maybe you could buy the, pre-order the hardcover here and then buy the other things at WonderCon.
Well, and this is
Do both.
the other thing that I've had the luxury, like, and we go back to like price points on Kickstarter versus other places.
Yeah.
This is a 100-page oversized hardcover with a dust jacket
Yeah.
that I think the early bird pricing was what, 25, and now
Yeah.
it's 20. Is it
30.
30? Is it 30 or is it 20? It's like 30.
Oh wait. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's $30 for an oversized hardcover, and in the direct market it would be at least that. Right.
Yeah.
So like this is not
Go up to
super, like I'm looking to build a fan base, and for a long time,
yeah.
and I just want to make sure, because I know, because again, I have the luxury of knowing that we're going to move 1,000 units or more. I know that I'll be ordering X thousand copies of this, so I can bring the price breakdown and share those savings with the fan base.
Yeah. What I really love that has been happening, I feel like it's been happening a lot more recently, is that indie creators are doing these hardcovers, and I think that's an even more enjoyable reading experience. Just and putting that on your shelf, a hardcover just looks so nice. Tart,
Yeah.
they did that. They had some great
Yes.
hardcovers recently.
And we're making sure the spine lines up. So the spine of this matches the spine of our first white ash hardcover that we did. And so those two line up nicely together.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I
Because
mean, like,
that's,
I know.
what is it? Is it Vertigo that had a lot of like
Mhm.
really different spines on things that really bothered collectors for a while?
Yeah. If you watch our project video, there's actually a part where like one dissolves into the other, so you can see, that they work together. So
Nice. I think since I didn't have the hardcover, I think I added that on to my pledge. I've got to remember. I got to check what I have on there.
it like, again,
It's-
this is the wonderful thing that we've had such a great fan base. I originally printed 1,500 copies of those, and we're down to this. I put my last 65 up for this campaign. We will
So-
go back to print on it when we do the Kickstarter for Volume 2. And
Yeah.
so that way that anyone who's picking up Volume 2 will be able to get a Volume 1. But yeah, it's a beautiful book.
Yeah. So everyone go check out Glarien Short and Deadly over on Kickstarter right now. Back this, help make the rest of the White Ash Comics year come true and all those dreams come true. That's, like you said, this helps to fund a lot of the projects throughout the year. So
It also lets me work with all the artists that you'd like me to work with and make sure they
Yeah.
get paid what they need to get paid.
Yeah, let's make this the best year for White Ash Comics ever.
I appreciate that.
I know we're getting close to the end. You've got another interview coming up after this. It's on the experience.
It is on the experience. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm doing a sketch up with Mog Park, who's also
okay. Yeah. Awesome. So I want to wrap things up so you have time to get over there. But anything else that you want to plug before we wrap things up here?
No, I mean, I like everyone who's watching this who has not subscribed to your channel to click that subscribe link right now. It's some of the best content in comics, and that people need to be watching your show. I'd like to say hello to Caroline, and I'm sorry that she couldn't make it out to join us tonight. Next time, I look forward to speaking with you. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all you're doing for indie
Absolutely.
comics.
Thank you for coming on. Where can people find you and follow what's going on with White Ash?
So the easiest thing is at Charles Stickney on Twitter. That's where I'm most responsive. We have a mailing list that you can get to through whiteashcomic.com, I think. Or back the Kickstarter right now, and at the end of it, I'll have links for that as well.
I think I tried going to whiteashcomic.com recently, and it takes you to the Kickstarter, but I
might
could
have
be
a
wrong.
redirect. Yeah, you know what? I'll send you the link to the newsletter, and you can add it to the chatter down below if you'd like.
Perfect. I'll throw that up in the description later. So if you're watching this later, it's down here somewhere. The magic of editing and things happening later.
That's right.
I appreciate that, Kyle. And thank you for watching. Thanks anyone else who's been out there in the chat, throwing in comments, contributing to the discussion tonight. Michelle, Lonzo, it was up there. Cole, appreciate you all. Charlie's fantastic. So everyone, go check out Charlie's work. Follow along with what's happening in the White Ash universe. Keep an eye out for more of the game, How I Slept My Way Through College. I think more of that's coming later this year.
More of everything. We're just going to keep making great content as long as people are buying it. We're going to be making it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on. We're going to have to do this again with the next thing you got coming up, and maybe Caroline will be there for that one with a better work schedule at that time. Yeah. So thanks again, everybody, and have a nice night.
Have a great night.